Imagine a player with a three-point accuracy of 99%, a shooter so lethal even Steph Curry would call him a demon. Yet, despite that, our protagonist, Marcus, has drifted through 8 different NBA teams because coaches simply wouldn't give him a chance. He never proved his worth until now. It's the final day of his 10-day contract, and the opportunity finally arrives. On the court, the Lakers are trailing the Warriors 80-110, down by 30. As we've seen in so many games before, the Lakers' offense is stagnant, and their 3 for 18 shooting from deep is painful to watch. Meanwhile, for the Warriors, their star, Curry, has entered God mode again, hitting 11 of 15 shots from beyond the arc. He has outscored the entire Lakers team from distance by himself. We enter the final 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. Seeing no hope for a comeback, the Lakers head coach has already pulled LeBron and Davis to the bench. LeBron is sitting there, head down, focused entirely on biting his fingernails. Davis is staring at the court, though his mind is clearly miles away. In this bleak atmosphere, the coach shakes his head helplessly. His gaze wanders across the bench before finally landing on Marcus. Standing before him is a young man from the East. Though his raw talent seemed average and he rarely played for the Lakers, he was always the hardest worker in practice. Marcus is humble and low-key, which earned him the coach's respect. Since today is the last day of his short-term contract, the coach decides to give him a chance. The Lakers won't be offering him a second contract, of course, but perhaps another team might see him and offer a job. It wasn't entirely impossible, even if the probability was essentially zero. With that thought, the coach beckons him over, telling Marcus it's finally his time to show what he can do. Marcus had been watching the coach intently. Hearing the call, he feels a surge of adrenaline rush to his head as he stands up abruptly. He pauses for a split second, but before he can overthink it, the referee signals him onto the court. He quickly jogs out to join the play. At the same time, across the ocean in the sports broadcast booth, the 2 commentators notice the substitution and offer a brief remark about their countryman. They mention that Marcus is entering the game and wonder how he'll perform. There's no grand introduction, just a simple mention. After all, he's been a bench warmer for 2 years. To be honest, the commentators have no expectations for him, and the live chat is even worse, filled with a wave of insults from frustrated fans. The viewers complain that seeing him is bad luck and tell him to stop embarrassing himself abroad and just come home. It's a harsh reception, really. When he first arrived in the NBA, expectations were sky high and fans praised him to the heavens. But a wrist injury during practice led to poor performances. Combined with the fact that many NBA coaches hold biases against Eastern players, Marcus was never given a real shot. Gradually, he became a forgotten man. The fans begin to lash out, acting as if they want to drag Marcus into the depths of hell. While a few sympathetic voices remain, they're almost entirely drowned out by the wave of hate. Back at the Staples Center, the Lakers are set to inbound. Marcus, playing as the shooting guard, brings the ball up to the half-court line. Around him, we see several other Lakers players who usually never see the court until garbage time. Now that they finally have a rare chance to play, they are naturally desperate to prove themselves. None of them seem interested in teamwork. Over the next 2 possessions, different players take shots and miss every single one, allowing the Warriors to stretch the lead even further to a staggering 35 points. Finally, on the 3rd possession, the ball finds its way to Marcus at the top of the arc. The moment he touches the ball, something changes. He feels a sudden surge of focus and an indescribable power, as if he has spent a lifetime preparing for this very stage. His senses are on fire, far beyond his usual state. Seeing his defender standing there with a lazy, relaxed posture, Marcus doesn't hesitate for a single second. He rises into a textbook jump shot, adding a slight, elegant fadeaway. The ball carves a beautiful, high arc through the air toward the basket. Swish. It's a clean 3-pointer. It was a gorgeous shot, really, but it barely registers with anyone in the building. Compared to a 30-point deficit, this single basket feels like a drop in the ocean. A third of the crowd has already left the arena, and those who remain are mostly chatting or scrolling through their phones. Across the ocean, the 2 commentators in the live broadcast booth are also distracted. They are busy discussing team rankings and don't even notice Marcus hitting a beautiful 3. The live chat, however, is filled with sarcastic comments, with fans claiming he just got lucky. One viewer even jokes that if Marcus hits 2 more, he'll eat something quite unsavory. The game continues. After a missed shot by the Warriors, the Lakers push back. 2 teammates fumble a pass, nearly allowing a steal, but by some stroke of luck, the ball bounces right back to Marcus at the top of the key. Once again, he doesn't hesitate. He catches and shoots immediately. He is in the zone now, knowing that if he doesn't give everything he has tonight, his career might end when his contract does. If he fails here, his dreams, and even his livelihood, will be in jeopardy. The ball sails through the air and, once again, finds nothing but the bottom of the net. Another beautiful 3-pointer. The score is now 86-115, cutting the lead down to 29. However, this second shot still fails to stir the crowd. Only the Lakers head coach is on his feet, clapping hard to encourage Marcus. Even LeBron has stopped biting his nails. He joins in the applause, knowing that as the team leader, he should acknowledge a teammate's hard-earned success. As Marcus stands tall, the Warriors make a mistake on their next possession. The Lakers launch a fast break, and Marcus sprints down the court with everything he has, finding his spot in The corner. His teammate looks for a layup, but the Warriors' defense is quick to recover, with their center already blocking the path to the rim. In that split second, the teammate instinctively kicks the ball out to Marcus. He doesn't hesitate, letting the ball fly once more. The ball rattles the rim before dropping through. 89-115. The Lakers have cut the lead to 26 points. This time, scattered across the arena, a few fans actually start to clap. Scoring 3 consecutive three-pointers in less than a minute is enough to cause a bit of a stir, even in a blowout. However, that was the extent of the excitement in the building. Meanwhile, in the online broadcast chat, fans are starting to lose their minds. After those back-to-back threes, everyone is looking for the viewer who promised to eat something unsavory. Naturally, that brave soul has long since vanished. Back at the Staples Center, the Warriors' head coach immediately calls for a timeout. Although Marcus's 9-point burst seems like a drop in the bucket, the coach isn't taking any chances. To be safe, he decides to address the defense against this newcomer. He gathers his players and points toward his best perimeter defender, a man with a massive afro. He tells him to stick to Marcus like glue, saying he'd rather let him drive than give up another three. The defender, looking quite unimpressed, glances over at Marcus with a sneer and a dismissive nod. He promises the coach he'll defend him so hard that Marcus will be crying for his mother by the end of the night. On the Lakers bench, the head coach is actually drawing up a play for Marcus. He instructs the other players to set screens and tells Marcus to shoot without hesitation if he finds an opening. Hearing this, Marcus feels a surge of warmth in his chest. In all his time in the league, this is the very first time a coach has actually designed a play specifically for him. It's a simple screen, yes, but it means everything. He nods firmly, his eyes burning with a new fire. Just then, the team leader, LeBron, walks over. He reaches out and gives Marcus a heavy, resounding high five. He tells Marcus he loves those threes, but expects to see even more. Marcus stands tall, shoulders back, and confidently tells him that he won't be disappointed. Meanwhile, back in the broadcast booth, the two commentators are finally looking at the box score. They go down the list. LeBron has 23, Davis has 28, and Marcus has 9. When they reach that last name, the commentator pauses in surprise. He realizes that Marcus has somehow already racked up 9 points. The other commentator notes that he just hit 3 consecutive three-pointers. 3 for 3 from deep is an impressive stat line. These 9 points are the most Marcus has scored since entering the league. We see the commentators wondering if Marcus has another 3 in him, noting his career high. However, they worry about his injured wrist, as that last shot looked a bit awkward. They suspect he might stop shooting from deep, given the immense pressure it puts on his joint. As they speak, the game resumes once more. The Warriors execute a perfect passing cut for a layup, pushing the lead back to 28. We return to the Lakers' offense, where things are getting personal. The defender with the afro is sticking to Marcus like a shadow. His coach told him to shut the newcomer down, and he intends to do exactly that. He mutters a constant stream of trash talk, mocking Marcus's lean frame and asking if he even has the strength left to launch another shot. It's quite relentless. He vows to stick to Marcus like glue until he's reduced to tears. Marcus, however, completely ignores the noise. To be honest, he's always preferred to let his game do the talking. Following the coach's new play, he curls around a screen and catches the ball at the top of the key. But his shadow is never far behind. The Afro-sporting defender is already closing in, leaving Marcus with only a heartbeat to act. Without a hint of hesitation, he stops, jumps, and finds his rhythm. The entire motion is fluid, almost poetic in its execution. The ball soars just past the defender's outstretched fingertips, escaping his desperate block. Under the bright arena spotlights, the ball carves an orange arc through the air before snapping the bottom of the net. Another perfect swish. As he pulls back his hand, Marcus glances at the defender and allows a small, mysterious smile to play on his lips. That shot felt even smoother than the last. At this moment, he realizes his scorching hot hand is likely thanks to his new system's abilities. Deep down, he knows the moment the ball leaves his fingertips whether it's going in. The defender is fuming now, his face twisted in a mix of shock and pure irritation. The man growls that he'll make Marcus cry all the way back home. For once, Marcus actually fires back, calmly telling him that he'll just keep shooting over him. This only fires the defender up more, and he follows Marcus down the court barking insults. Marcus simply tunes it out, treating the noise like a barking dog. With his 4th consecutive three-pointer, the lead has been cut to 25. The shift from 35 to 25 felt as though it happened in an instant. On the Lakers' sideline, the players are all on their feet. Even if the game is likely lost, 4 threes in 90 seconds is nothing short of a miracle. The Warriors miss their next attempt, and as the Lakers bring it back up, Marcus calls for the ball the moment he crosses half-court. His performance has clearly won over his teammates, and the point guard finds him immediately. The defender is already draped all over him, but Marcus uses a teammate's screen to create a sliver of daylight. He's still a good 6 feet behind the three-point line, but that doesn't seem to matter anymore. If he keeps dribbling, that Afro-sporting defender will catch him in no time. Without thinking, Marcus pulls up, snaps his wrist, and lets it fly. Swish. Another three-pointer finds the bottom of the net, cutting the lead to 22. Suddenly, a third of the crowd is on its feet, cheering wildly. With less than 3 minutes left and a 20-point gap, a comeback is still nearly impossible. Yet, seeing this newcomer sink 5 consecutive threes has reignited their passion. People are asking who this guy is, calling him the Lakers' answer to Steph Curry. They've never seen him before. Word spreads that he's just a 10-day contract player, though his name remains a mystery to most. As the shot falls, Marcus feels his adrenaline surging. His confidence is swelling to the point of bursting. In this moment, the hoop looks as wide as the ocean. It feels like no matter how he throws the ball, it will obediently find its way home. On the Warriors bench, Curry's eyes are flickering with genuine interest. As a legendary shooter and the pioneer of the small ball era, seeing someone else hit 5 straight threes has set his own competitive spirit ablaze. He wants to compete. However, when he looks toward his head coach, the man simply gives a subtle shake of his head. The game is won. There's no need for Curry. On the next possession, the Warriors miss another long-range attempt. It's the Lakers' turn again, and Marcus calls for the ball the moment he crosses half-court. The defender has learned his lesson. He meets Marcus 6 feet beyond the arc, determined to deny him even a glimpse of the rim. Marcus just dribbles, glancing down at his right hand. Seeing this brief moment of hesitation, the defender gets hyped, clapping his hands loudly and taunting Marcus to try something. He dares Marcus to shoot, even offering a $100 bet that he'll miss. This kind of trash talk is a classic psychological tactic. After all, shooting, especially from deep, requires immense mental focus. If a player's mind wavers even slightly, their shooting form will inevitably begin to break down. And once the form breaks, the shots stop falling. Marcus feels his blood boil at the challenge, but instead of driving forward, he does something unexpected. He actually takes 3 steps back, retreating until his heels are touching the center court logo. The defender laughs, flashing a wide, mocking grin. He asks Marcus if he really thinks he's Steph Curry, mocking him for trying a logo shot. He tells Marcus he must still be dreaming. Even the commentators are stunned. One asks what on earth this young man is doing, while the other jokes about the audacity of the move. They wonder if he's let those 5 shots go to his head, acting like he's already a superstar. Their tone is laced with a fair bit of mockery. But before they can finish their sentence, Marcus puts his full strength into a push shot from the logo. He knew it would take everything he had. The ball leaves his hand with a perfect touch. We see it hanging in the air, a long flight ahead, but Marcus doesn't even wait. He simply turns his back to the hoop, raises his right hand high, and flashes 3 fingers. Yes, he's celebrating while the ball is still sailing through an impossibly long arc. A second after he makes the gesture, the ball slams into the net like a heavy cannonball. The logo shot is good. This wasn't a soft swish. It was a powerful strike, cutting through the air across half court like a guided missile. As the ball thunders through the rim, it seems to detonate the entire Staples Center. The arena instantly erupts in a deafening roar of disbelief. People are screaming, "Oh my God, a logo shot." They can't believe he turned his back to celebrate early. It is, quite frankly, incredibly cool. The decibel level in the building skyrockets. A logo shot is visually stunning enough, but to turn away before it even goes in? That is a level of confidence even Curry rarely displays. Not only is the crowd losing its mind, but those 2 commentators who were just mocking him have suddenly changed their tune. They're shouting in disbelief, wondering how he actually pulled off that impossible logo shot. They're calling him the second coming of Steph Curry. Many NBA commentators are like weather vanes. After all, they blow whichever way the wind is strongest. They praise him now without a hint of embarrassment. On the giant screen, the camera lingers on Marcus before finally cutting to Curry on the sidelines. Warriors coach Steve Kerr shakes his head helplessly, realizing what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a Curry-style barrage. Curry himself remains still, but his eyes are burning with a newfound competitive fire. Meanwhile, the Lakers bench has completely lost it. The substitutes are frantically waving towels, and even the starters are jumping up to high-five each other. Even Anthony Davis stands up despite his injury, his thick brows arched high in pure shock. LeBron James is on his feet as well, holding up 3 fingers with an exaggerated expression, repeating, "Oh my God," over and over again. Across the ocean, the international broadcast booths are just as electric. The commentators' eyes are practically glowing after seeing 6 threes in just 2 minutes, including that logo shot. Marcus has just put up 18 points in a blink. It is, to be honest, beyond imagination. Most viewers had already tuned out because it was garbage time, but those who stayed are now flooding the chat with praise. The fans are asking if this is the rise of a new legend. After hitting that logo shot, Marcus doesn't even look back at the rim. He celebrates before the ball even hits the rim. Some fans are swooning, wishing for a boyfriend that cool, but the haters are already out in force. They point out he's barely scored 100 points in 2 years, calling this game pure luck. They want him to stop embarrassing them and just go home. They challenge him to hit a few more, claiming his early celebration was arrogant and disrespectful. One even bets he'll do a handstand if Marcus hits 8. But on the court, that logo shot has pushed his confidence to the absolute limit. We see the lead has been cut down to 19 points now. This is the feeling he's been chasing. His heart is pounding, his blood is on fire, and his body is practically vibrating with adrenaline after that shot. Turning away to celebrate is something many stars have done. LeBron has done it, and Curry too. But doing it on a logo shot? He is the very first to pull that off. He usually prefers to stay humble, but basketball is a game of expression and high energy. On the court, you have to show everything you've got and let your personality shine. After all, if you aren't bold here, where can you be? The afro-haired defender watches the ball bounce off the floor, his eyes wide with shock. To be honest, he looks like he's seen a ghost. He's speechless for a long moment until Marcus glances at him and calmly reminds him not to forget about that $100 bet. The defender snaps out of it with a curse, telling Marcus he's officially annoyed him, but Marcus has already turned back to play defense. On the next play, the Warriors' attack is smothered. Ryan brings the ball across half-court and looks to set a screen for Marcus's next shot. But Marcus is feeling the heat now. He waves his teammate off, signaling that he doesn't need the help, so Ryan clears the space. He faces the defender and considers beckoning him over with a finger, but that's a taunt that would surely earn him a technical foul. He isn't afraid of the foul, but the $25,000 fine is a fortune for someone on a 10-day contract. He suppresses the urge. Instead, he uses his best broken English to tell the man to come on. The defender, now fuming, steps up with a wide, desperate stance. Marcus lets a mysterious smile play on his lips as he suddenly jabs his right foot out. The defender, naturally, bites on the move and shifts. But Marcus has already pulled his foot back and is rising for the jump shot. The defender realizes he's been played and curses under his breath. He tries to recover and contest the shot, but there's only a split-second window. Marcus lets the three-pointer fly as the Lakers bench stands up as one. Every single spectator in the arena is now frozen, their eyes glued to the flight of the ball. The ball arcs through the air, and for a moment, the entire stadium holds its breath. The explosive power of that shot is simply staggering. This newcomer is so strong that we have to wonder why he only has a 10-day contract. The Lakers better offer Marcus a guaranteed deal soon, or they'll regret it when another team snaps him up. Meanwhile, the commentators are losing their minds. They call it one of the most incredible performances they've ever seen. It's pure magic. But compared to them, the fans watching from across the ocean are being far more expressive with their colorful language. Back on the court, Marcus looks at the afro-haired defender and feels a sense of pure satisfaction. The defender's face has gone dark with frustration, and the trash talk has finally stopped. He has fallen completely silent, and who could blame him, really? In just over 2 minutes, the man he was supposed to guard has dropped over a dozen points right on his head, especially that last play. It was personal. Marcus specifically called him over just to sink a deep three-pointer right in his face. It's the kind of move that doesn't just hurt the score, it wounds the pride. He doesn't have the nerve to talk back anymore. It's almost funny, considering he just told Marcus to go crying back home. Now, Marcus isn't the one crying. Instead, the defender is the one left standing there, looking like he's about to burst into tears himself. He is utterly speechless as the reality of the situation sinks in. If Marcus hits just 2 more threes, the lead will drop to single digits. Sensing the danger, the Warriors' head coach calls for another timeout. There's a hint of genuine fear in his eyes as he barks orders at his players. He tells them to double-team Marcus, to smother him the moment he touches the ball. The Warriors players look at each other in disbelief, wondering if they heard him right. The plan is simple: force Marcus to pass and stop him from shooting at all costs. They exchange skeptical glances. To be honest, double-teaming a guy on a 10-day contract whose name they barely know seems like a bit much. It feels like they're giving him far too much credit, but no one dares to question the coach. When they return to the court, the Warriors follow the plan. They immediately swarm Marcus with a double team. The commentators can't help but laugh at the absurdity of the sight. "Are you seeing this?" one asks. The other joins in the laughter, noting that being double-teamed by the Warriors is quite the honor. The crowd is loving the drama, but Marcus isn't smiling. Even with his heightened focus, his wrist injury is still flaring up, making every dribble painful. Faced with 2 defenders, he has no choice but to pass the ball. He hopes his open teammates can capitalize on the space he's created. Unfortunately, their next 2 three-point attempts both rattle off the rim. We see Marcus moving relentlessly, weaving through screens to find any opening. In the final 2.5 minutes, he seizes 2 more chances and sinks 2 more triples. Every time he hits a three, the stadium erupts like a crashing wave. Finally, the buzzer sounds, and the scoreboard freezes at 111 to 118. The Lakers lost by a mere 7 points. And yet, strangely enough, the fans in the stands don't seem disappointed at all. They don't even know his name yet. Instead, they chant his jersey number, number 1, number 1. Even though they lost, they look more excited than if they had actually won the game. The team leader, James, is the first to walk over. He gives Marcus a powerful hug and whispers, "Brother, you actually did it. 28 points in 5 minutes. Thank you for letting me witness such a legendary performance," he says. Anthony also comes over for a high five. The Lakers are acting like they just won a championship. On the other side, the Warriors look grim despite their victory. They seem frustrated, and their head coach looks like he's just seen a ghost. He's breaking out in a cold sweat. They were up by 30 points with 5 minutes left, a guaranteed blowout, and they nearly let it slip away. If they had lost, he would have been nailed to the pillar of historical shame forever. As is tradition, the star players meet at center court to exchange post-game handshakes. The Warriors captain, Curry, hugs James and Anthony first, sharing a few words. Then, he turns his attention directly toward Marcus and walks over. A spark of competitive fire flashes in his eyes as he tells Marcus, "Your three-pointer is incredibly strong." Marcus doesn't blink, replying, "Yours isn't too bad either." Curry immediately breaks into that famous, boyish grin. Even with the beard, he still has that youthful charm that earned him his nickname. It's almost disarming. Curry adds, I hope we can truly face off properly next time. Marcus nods firmly, his own competitive spirit surging. After all, who wouldn't want to challenge the best? Just then, a Lakers bench player approaches Marcus with a message. Marcus, General Manager Pelinka wants to see you in his office right now. Hearing this, Marcus feels his heart skip a beat. His 10-day contract expires tonight. Usually, if a team doesn't want you, they just call your agent. A personal summons from the general manager usually means only one thing. They want to talk about a contract extension. It's the moment he's been waiting for. Standing nearby, James hears the news and looks genuinely happy for him. He smiles and says, Marcus, I told you, tonight might just be the start of your luck. Marcus offers a quick thanks and heads straight for Rob Pelinka's office. Pelinka is known for being a quiet, observant man who often watches from the shadows. He usually stands at the far end of the stands, watching the team in total silence. No one ever knows exactly what he's thinking. To be honest, it's a bit intimidating. Now, sitting behind his desk, he looks up as Marcus enters. Marcus, he begins, your performance tonight was a surprise to everyone, including me. Pelinka notes that with Dennis injured and yet to return, the backcourt is missing a scorer and asks if Marcus would sign another 10-day contract. The general manager is a smooth talker. He doesn't say the team is willing to sign him, but asks if Marcus is willing to sign with them. While the meaning is similar, the former puts the team on a pedestal, while the latter shows genuine respect for the player. Marcus had expected this, knowing his performance on the court would surely impress the Lakers management, but hearing it from the GM himself still brings a surge of joy. He tells Pelinka he has no reason to refuse. To be honest, securing another 10-day deal is already a victory. A guaranteed contract is still out of reach. The Lakers won't offer that yet, especially since their starting point guard, Dennis, is set to return in about a week. The backcourt will soon be crowded. Naturally, a guaranteed spot is impossible unless Marcus can deliver more dazzling performances during this second 10-day window. Thinking of this, he remembers that mysterious system in his mind and quietly clenches his fist. Pelinka continues, explaining that this second 10-day contract is worth $20,000, hoping it meets his expectations. Marcus nods immediately, expressing his sincere gratitude and satisfaction. 10-day contracts vary from a few thousand to tens of thousands based on past performance. His last contract was only $8,000. This jump to $20,000 means his life won't be quite so strained anymore. Leaving the office, he finds Alex waiting for him. Since Marcus is staying at his place, Alex waits for him after every home game. He asks if it's a guaranteed deal, but Marcus simply shakes his head. Alex pats his shoulder, telling him not to worry. If he keeps playing like he did tonight, that guaranteed contract is only a matter of time. Marcus nods without saying much. After a simple dinner at Alex's house, he lies down on his bed in the garage, and that cold electronic voice returns. The legendary Superstar system has activated a training mission. Make 1,000 three-pointers. The reward? A permanent three-point shooting percentage boost to 45%. That night, Marcus can't sleep at all, his mind racing over that incredible promise. A 45% success rate is staggering, as that would place him among the elite shooters in the world. Even a player as great as Curry has a career three-point average that doesn't quite reach 45%. Looking back across the entire history of the NBA, there are very few who can claim such consistency from beyond the arc. In this modern small ball era, without a steady outside shot, the game becomes a constant struggle. But for Marcus, everything is about to change. We can only imagine how terrifying it would be to raise a three-point percentage to 45% at 4 in the morning. Long before dawn, Marcus was already rushing to the empty arena. The drowsy security guard recognized him as the new player on the 10-day contract. Looking out at the deep, dark night sky, the guard couldn't help but mutter about such incredible dedication. After arriving at the gym and turning on the lights, Marcus set up the shooting machine. It was time to get to work. He wanted to focus entirely on three-pointers today, as the team lacked a steady shooter. James considered the request and nodded in agreement. Disrupting a coach's training plan is something a newcomer certainly can't do. Only a superstar like James, with absolute authority, can pull that off. James rarely abuses his power, but today, he made an exception for Marcus. By 10 o'clock, the rest of the players began to trickle in. Most had just woken up, and seeing Marcus and James already drenched in sweat had become a familiar sight. The team followed the coach's plan, while Marcus stayed in the corner, relentlessly practicing his shot. By 4 in the afternoon, training finally ended. The players began to leave, but Marcus was only 11 shots away from finishing his mission. James didn't leave either, he stayed to put in extra work. Watching Marcus shoot like a man possessed, James realized he had been at it all day without even stopping for lunch. James stood there in stunned silence, simply watching. Because Marcus was completely exhausted, those final 11 shots took nearly 60 attempts. Finally, as the last three-pointer snapped through the net, that cold electronic voice echoed in his mind. The mission was complete. His shooting percentage was now locked at 45%. Marcus let out a long breath and collapsed onto the floor in exhaustion. James and Alex, who had been waiting for him, remained quiet. After gasping for air for 2 minutes, Marcus looked up and smiled at them. He told them they could trust him in tomorrow's game against the Clippers. James and Alex exchanged a look, remembering his training. Percentage was barely 20% today. They had no idea where this confidence came from. The next evening, the game was about to begin. As both teams warmed up, the Clippers' aggressive guard, Patrick, approached his coach and asked for the toughest defensive assignment. Coach Tyron nodded immediately, telling Patrick that LeBron was his responsibility. Hearing this, Patrick's eyes filled with a predatory intensity. His eyes flashed with a predatory light, like a hound spotting its prey. Patrick, known as the Mad Dog, may be undersized, but his fighting spirit is boundless. Once he steps onto the court, he hunts the opponent's star player relentlessly. Even legends like Kevin Durant have found themselves completely stifled by his suffocating defense. He once even got Durant ejected along with himself. Naturally, Patrick is the go-to weapon for neutralizing an opponent's primary threat. Of course, the Clippers have another defensive powerhouse in Leonard, famous for his claw defense. But as the team's centerpiece, Leonard must conserve his energy for the offensive end. Under normal circumstances, Coach Tyron wouldn't waste Leonard's energy on defensive assignments. Besides, in the coach's eyes, the aging James didn't require Leonard's elite lockdown skills anymore. The game began shortly after. We see Marcus sitting at the very end of the bench, watching the battle on the court while keeping one eye on Coach Vogel. He was terrified of missing even the slightest signal that it was his turn to play. To be honest, his anxiety was quite understandable. With both teams so evenly matched, the game was bound to be a grind. In such a high-stakes situation, it was unlikely the coach would risk playing a newcomer. But as a professional, Marcus knew he had to stay ready at every moment. The game was a back-and-forth affair, with the Lakers holding a massive advantage in the paint. Meanwhile, the broadcast crew was buzzing. Mina, a massive James fan, was hosting as usual, and the commentator, Mike, opened with a burning question. He noted that in the last game, Marcus had hit 9 three-pointers in the final 5 minutes to score 28 points. It was, quite frankly, an explosive performance. He asked the analyst, Sam, if Marcus would play tonight. Sam smiled as he flipped through his notes, acknowledging that Marcus's previous performance had indeed stunned everyone. The Lakers had signed him to another 10-day contract specifically for his shooting, but this game was a different story. Since the teams were so close in skill, Sam predicted the game would be too tight for Marcus to get an opportunity. Mike agreed it was a logical analysis, yet they both remained hopeful for another spectacular show. In the live chat, fans were already clamoring for Marcus to take the court. One fan remarked that they hadn't followed the Lakers since the legends retired, but seeing a countryman score 28 points in 5 minutes was truly shocking. Of course, the critics far outnumbered the fans. They argued it was just one game, and they still lost. After all, scoring 100 points means nothing if you can't win. They claimed it was just luck during garbage time when no one was defending. They challenged him to do it again tonight under real pressure, if he even played. Marcus, sitting in the arena, had no idea about the online storm. And even if he did, he likely wouldn't have cared. He wouldn't have cared anyway. After all, over the last 2 years, he had endured more than his fair share of online vitriol and slander. His mind had long since been forged into something incredibly resilient, making him completely immune to verbal attacks. On the court, the Mad Dog Patrick was sticking to James like glue, his mouth a constant stream of trash talk. His movements were aggressive, bordering on a violation. James, being older now, has shifted his playstyle to conserve energy, so in the first half, he generally doesn't look to score much. He mostly stays at the top of the key, orchestrating the offense. Fortunately, the Lakers shooters were holding their own, hitting 5 of 11 three-pointers. During the first half, by the break, the teams were separated by only 2 points. However, as we enter the third quarter, the atmosphere on the court shifts suddenly. James had originally planned to attack the paint and kick the ball out in the third, but the Lakers' perimeter shooting fell back into its usual, stagnant state. They missed 3 straight open looks. In stark contrast, the Clippers knocked down 4 consecutive triples, and the lead ballooned to 14 points in an instant. Coach Vogel hurriedly called a timeout, placing heavy emphasis on defending the perimeter. However, emphasizing defense is useless if the Lakers can't score themselves. And as it turned out, things were only getting worse. After the timeout, the Clippers poured in 2 more threes. Because the Lakers couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from deep, the Clippers implemented a sagging zone defense. James couldn't find a lane to drive, leaving the Lakers searching for opportunities on the perimeter. But that is often how these things go. The more anxious you get, the less the shots fall. With 6 minutes left in the third quarter, the Lakers found themselves trailing by a full 20 points. Coach Vogel, wise as he may be, was at a loss. Everyone knows the best way to break a zone is with three-pointers, but if you can't hit them, it's a miserable experience. A heavy gloom began to settle over the Lakers' bench. In that moment, Alex remembered what Marcus had said the day before. "You can absolutely trust me." Thinking of this, he whispered something into James's ear. James's eyes lit up immediately as he glanced over at Marcus. Meanwhile, across the ocean, as the Lakers fell 20 points behind, the 2 commentators in the broadcast booth began brainstorming for the team. Mike was the first to speak, turning to the analyst, Sam. He noted the 20-point deficit and joked that Mina looked like she was about to cry. For the sake of a better game, and to keep Mina from being heartbroken, he asked if Sam could offer the Lakers some advice. Hearing Mike's playful tone, Sam smiled and remarked that the Lakers' current problem was simply that their shots weren't falling. It's common knowledge that you beat a zone with threes, and the Lakers knew it too. We all saw that in those few minutes. Alex took 2 shots, Kyle took 1, and even James and Davis took their turns from deep. Between the 5 of them, they went a combined 1 for 6. With a shooting percentage like that, any other team would have been blown out long ago. It was only the Lakers' decent defensive efficiency that kept them in it until now. Being down by only 20 points means their core issue is still the three-pointer. In today's small ball era, if you can't shoot from deep, every opponent becomes a mountain. Mike nodded in agreement, noting that if Coach Vogel were a bit bolder and utilized Marcus, things might actually take a turn for the better. Sam replied that it all rests on Vogel now, expressing hope that he won't wait until garbage time to bring Marcus onto the court like he did last time. After Marcus's explosive performance in the previous game, one has to wonder why they wouldn't try him before the game is completely out of reach. Fans in the live chat were echoing the sentiment, calling for Marcus to get in the game, though a few skeptics argued that if the starters couldn't solve it, then no one could. Back on the bench, Alex leaned toward Vogel to suggest a change, but before he could even finish his sentence, Vogel nodded and decided to give Marcus a shot. To be honest, Vogel is a coach who isn't afraid to take risks with his rotations. He had already considered putting Marcus in, but seeing James deep in conversation with the young man, he chose to wait for James to make the suggestion himself. James is the leader of this team, and having the suggestion come from him helps the players respect the decision more, which is great for team unity. Vogel also knew that by doing this, he would earn James's favor. When dealing with a superstar of that caliber, their willingness to follow the coach's plan is vital to winning or losing. It's clear that Vogel's emotional intelligence is quite high. He finally waved Marcus over. Marcus, who had been ready for this moment, practically sprang up like a coiled wire and jogged over to the coach's side. Vogel told him that LeBron had suggested he play, adding that he hoped Marcus wouldn't let them down. Marcus felt a surge of excitement and nodded firmly. He told the coach to trust him. At that exact moment, a cold electronic voice echoed in his mind. Check-in successful. Reward, Junior Lockdown Defense Trial Card. With that power-up ready, Marcus made a bold request. Once I'm on the court, please let me guard Kawhi. It was Kawhi's relentless drives that had forced the Lakers to collapse their defense, which in turn gave the Clippers so many open looks from the perimeter. If someone could actually stop Kawhi's penetration, the Clippers' three-point opportunities would vanish. It was a simple plan, if a difficult one to execute. Coach Vogel was surprised. From what he knew, Marcus's physical gifts were average and his lateral speed wasn't exactly elite, making his defense mediocre at best. And yet, here he was, volunteering to guard a machine like Kawhi. Marcus looked him in the eye and told the coach to give him just 2 possessions. He promised that if he couldn't stop him, they could switch. The truth was, the Lakers had already rotated through almost every defender, and none had worked. Well, since the current strategy wasn't working, Vogel figured he might as well let Marcus try, though he knew better than to voice his doubts out loud. The coach took a moment to process the request and nodded, telling Marcus he had exactly 3 possessions to prove himself. Marcus nodded back firmly. He clenched his fists, his eyes locking onto Kawhi across the court like a wolf spotting its prey. And so, as the timeout ended, we see Marcus stepping back onto the hardwood with his teammates. The commentators immediately took notice, reminding the audience of his 9 three-pointers in the last game. They wondered aloud if he could recreate that magic today. In the stands of the Staples Center, the home fans began to cheer for the young man. Admittedly, the cheers weren't overwhelming. The team was trailing by a lot, and many fans still didn't recognize this bench player who'd only arrived 10 days ago. Online, the skeptics were already out in force, mocking the decision to put him back in and waiting for him to make a fool of himself. Meanwhile, the Lakers moved into their offensive set. James held the ball at the top of the key, while the Clippers' defense remained in a tight zone. James scanned his teammates before his eyes finally settled on Marcus. He called out the young man's name and fired a crisp pass his way. Marcus caught the ball without a hint of hesitation, bent his knees, and rose into the air. With a smooth flick of his wrist, the ball was away. It traced a perfect, rainbow-like arc through the air before snapping through the net. The crisp sound of the swish echoed through the arena's speakers, and the stadium DJ immediately announced the three-pointer with a booming voice. Marcus stood there for a brief moment, listening to his name ring out. He closed his eyes to savor the feeling before James came over for a high five, telling him to enjoy the moment. Even Alex walked over to offer a nod. Across the court, the Clippers' coach, Tyronn Lue, didn't seem bothered by the shot. To him, it was just one three-pointer in a game they were winning. The Clippers players shared that indifference. They had done their scouting and knew about his explosive 5-minute performance in the previous game. But they also knew that such legendary streaks usually only happen once in a lifetime. It was a fluke, they told themselves, like a miracle that wouldn't repeat. Believing Marcus couldn't possibly stay that hot for 2 games in a row, Coach Lue made no defensive adjustments. Then, it was the Clippers' turn to attack. Marcus immediately stepped up to guard their superstar, Kawhi. Under normal circumstances, his average physical tools would make stopping a giant like Kawhi impossible. But he immediately activated his lockdown defense trial card. Suddenly, he felt a surge of speed in his legs, and his lateral movement became incredibly sharp. As the ball was brought across half-court and handed to Kawhi, Marcus was already in position, feet set, and ready to defend the machine. As Marcus squared up against Kawhi, the commentators couldn't hide their shock. They wondered aloud if this newcomer really intended to be the primary defender on a superstar. He was half a head shorter and significantly lighter than Kawhi. To be honest, most observers expected him to be shredded like a sieve by the veteran's offense. Online, the live stream chats were practically exploding with mockery. Fans were convinced Marcus was simply asking for a beating by trying to guard the claw. They figured he'd grown arrogant after hitting one lucky three-pointer. After all, Kawhi could easily ignore Marcus's height and do whatever he wanted. Whether it was a pull-up jumper or a physical drive, the mismatch seemed absolute. However, Kawhi didn't immediately opt for the shot. A simple pull-up wasn't his preferred way to score. He favored driving halfway into the paint before pulling up for a lethal, sudden mid-range jumper. Kawhi quickly put the ball on the floor, looking to blow past Marcus on the right. But Marcus had already read the slight twitch of the superstar's shoulder. With a burst of lateral speed, Marcus slid his feet and cut off the driving lane. Seeing his path blocked, Kawhi pivoted on his left foot for a quick spin move. He intended to break toward the left, but just as he completed the turn and the ball was about to hit the floor, a hand reached out from the shadows. Marcus intercepted the ball midair, stripping the superstar clean. At that exact moment, we see another figure already sprinting toward the other end of the court. Marcus looked up and saw James streaking down the floor. Without a second thought, he whipped a left-handed pass across the court to his captain. James caught it in stride, took one dribble, and soared. With a thunderous boom, he delivered a signature tomahawk jam that ignited the entire arena. The broadcast cameras immediately focused on James, replaying the powerful dunk from every angle. Yet, strangely enough, few noticed the steal that started it all. James, however, hadn't forgotten. He ran back to the defensive end and gave Marcus an enthusiastic high-five, shouting that it was a beautiful pass. Even Kawhi turned back to look at Marcus. It was a calm gaze, but beneath the surface, a superstar's pride was starting to burn after being stripped. The Clippers guard, Patrick, knew this well. After bringing the ball across half-court, he immediately looked to feed Kawhi so he could get his revenge. Marcus anticipated this perfectly. He switched to a front denial defense, using his newfound agility to ensure Kawhi didn't even get a chance to touch the ball. Back on the perimeter, Marcus realized that playing with James made everything simpler. As a shooter, you just had to find your spot and wait for the ball. Sure enough, James faked a drive to collapse the defense before zipping a pass right into Marcus's pocket. By then, Paul George was already closing in. Paul, a seasoned veteran who had spent years as the backdrop for other people's highlights, lunged forward, desperate to stop the momentum James had created. Paul had been on the receiving end of game winners from Lillard, Wade, Booker, and Butler. In fact, the list of players who had hit daggers over him was long enough to circle the globe. 5 times over, perhaps. This was largely because his defense was so elite that he was usually tasked with the final stop. But in this moment, things were different. Facing the lunging Paul, Marcus didn't hesitate for a single second. He let the shot fly with absolute resolve, and with a crisp snap of the nylon, the three-pointer found its mark. The deficit, which had been 20 points just moments ago, had shrunk by 8 in less than a minute. As the gap closed to 12, the arena fell into a state of stunned disbelief. The Clippers head coach immediately called for a timeout. Over in the broadcast booth, the commentators were amazed, noting that Marcus had just buried 2 triples in 60 seconds. They wondered if Marcus was about to repeat his miracle from the last game. One analyst, ever the rationalist, argued that such a legendary performance usually only happens once in a lifetime. He felt that lightning rarely strikes twice. However, if Marcus could simply maintain a high shooting percentage, it would be a godsend for the Lakers' struggling offense. During the timeout, the Clippers coach turned to his defensive specialist, Patrick, and gave him a very specific instruction. He wanted Patrick to get out there and play like a mad dog. He told him to smother Marcus. In their basketball culture, being called a dog isn't an insult. It's a badge of loyalty and tenacity, and Patrick wore that nickname with pride. As play resumed, Marcus continued his death-grip defense on Kawhi. This time, however, the Clippers had adjusted their strategy to get their superstar the ball. Kawhi used a screen to finally create some space, but the moment he touched the ball, a hand appeared like a ghost and swiped at it. With a sharp smack, the ball was loose. Kawhi dove to the floor in a desperate scramble, but Marcus was already a step ahead, sliding toward the ball with a grin. He saw Anthony already sprinting toward the other end. With a powerful flick of his left hand, Marcus sent the ball flying downcourt to meet Anthony in stride. Anthony caught it and soared for a thunderous dunk that shook the stanchion. The crowd erupted like a tidal wave. The announcers shouted in excitement, praising Anthony's finish, but they realized they could no longer ignore what Marcus was doing on the other end. He had successfully shut down Kawhi for 3 consecutive possessions. To be honest, forcing a superstar like Kawhi into 3 straight turnovers is a feat rarely seen in this league. It was becoming clear that everyone had vastly underestimated Marcus's defensive grit. With his elite shooting and lockdown defense, he was proving to be the ultimate 3-and-D player. And that is exactly what the Lakers needed. With stars like James and Anthony drawing the focus, a role player's job is simple: defend and hit threes. Marcus was doing both perfectly. He seemed to be the perfect missing piece for the Lakers' core. The commentators even suggested that the front office should start thinking about offering him a guaranteed contract. On the court, Marcus overheard the announcer's praise, and a knowing smile played across his lips. A 3-and-D player? Well, his ambitions went much further than that. With the lead now cut to just 10 points, the Lakers went back on the attack. James brought the ball across half-court once more, looking to keep the momentum swinging. James feigned a drive to collapse the defense, searching for an opening, but the Clippers were ready this time. They utilized a four-man zone defense to protect the paint. The strategy was clear. They were going to wall off the interior and force the Lakers to beat them from the outside. It was a classic defensive adjustment designed to test the resolve of the Lakers' shooters. Patrick was right there, chirping that Marcus wouldn't even touch the ball. We know his reputation. He's the kind of player who initiates constant physical contact. He relentlessly talks trash to bait his opponents into losing their cool. Once you get angry, he's won. But Marcus stayed calm, refusing to let Patrick's antics get under his skin. He wasn't about to let Patrick smother him, either. Marcus proactively curled around a screen set by Anthony. After all, a quality 3-and-D player can't just stand around waiting. You have to work for your shots, and as Marcus found daylight, James's pass arrived right on time. It was a perfectly synchronized moment of veteran playmaking. Marcus caught the ball beyond the arc, but Patrick managed to squeeze through the screen and lunge toward him. He knew he couldn't actually block the shot from that distance. Instead, as he jumped, he swiped his hand violently toward Marcus's face. It was a calculated move. Marcus felt a flicker of tension, and though he released the ball, his focus wavered. The shot rattled off the rim. As for Patrick, he pulled his hand back just inches from Marcus's face, avoiding any actual physical contact. It was a psychological strike. Marcus frowned, well aware that Patrick had always been known for playing a bit dirty. To be honest, it was a miracle there wasn't a whistle on the play. The tension on the court was becoming palpable as the two players locked eyes. Up in the booth, the commentators noted the shift in momentum. They watched closely as the Clippers looked to capitalize on the missed opportunity. Kawhi finally used a screen from their center, Zubac, to shake free from Marcus's shadow and bury a mid-range jumper. Just like that, the lead was back to 12. As Marcus prepared to inbound, James looked at him and asked if he still had the nerve to shoot. Marcus simply flashed a confident smile in response. He told James that as long as he kept passing, he'd keep shooting. James wasn't sure where this confidence came from, as Marcus wasn't quite as hot as he'd been the previous night. And yet, the young man remained unshakable. James wondered if it was the extra practice paying off as he brought the ball up. Marcus was already curling around another screen. He moved to the left wing, his back to the basket, while Patrick chased him like a mad dog, refusing to give him an inch of breathing room. James fired the pass. Marcus caught it with his back to the rim and suddenly leaped into the air, beginning a daring turn while suspended in mid-flight. As he turned, Marcus leaned back, his right leg extending slightly to maintain balance, while his left arm rose to flick his wrist. This shot didn't follow a graceful arc. Instead, it traveled on a flat, laser-like trajectory. The ball cut through the air with the speed of a high-velocity projectile, slamming into the hoop with a thunderous rattle. Patrick, who expected Marcus to at least face the basket before jumping, was caught completely off guard. He never imagined Marcus would leap with his back to the rim and rotate midair. By the time he could react, the ball had already cleared his reach and found the net. The arena announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, crediting the three-pointer to Marcus. Hearing that name, Patrick felt a surge of frustration and clenched his fist, muttering a curse under his breath. He immediately went back to his trash talk, telling Marcus he was just lucky and that it wouldn't happen again. Marcus, however, remained entirely unfazed, which only fueled Patrick's inner irritation. He had built a career on getting under the skin of elite stars. Usually, a few insults and some physical provocation would cause opponents to lose their composure and start playing recklessly. To be honest, that was his entire game plan. Such reactions always played right into the Clippers' hands. But this young man was different. Despite the constant barrage of insults, Marcus wasn't angry at all. Instead, he wore a faint, dismissive smile. It was the look of an adult watching a child throw a tantrum, amused, perhaps, but certainly not bothered. It seems Patrick's ability to overthink is just as sharp as his defensive intensity. We return to the action as he brings the ball up, looking for Kawhi. This time, Marcus didn't shadow Kawhi tightly. He gave him a step of breathing room, his eyes darting back and forth toward Paul George. Patrick assumed Marcus was simply worried about a pass to the perimeter. Feeling confident, he decided to fire the ball toward Kawhi. But it was a trap. Marcus suddenly lunged like a predator, intercepting the pass mid-air with explosive speed. His previous glance toward Paul George had been nothing more than a clever feint to bait the throw. Now, the fast break was on. Patrick was right on his heels, chasing him down like a man possessed, refusing to let him go. With his right hand still injured, Marcus had to rely on his left. His dribbling was naturally a bit slower than usual as he crossed half-court. Patrick caught up quickly, reaching in from the side to disrupt the handle while continuing his relentless verbal assault. He vowed that Marcus wouldn't score another point. Marcus glanced over and saw Alex trailing the play, creating a perfect 2-on-1 opportunity. However, under such heavy physical pressure, a one-handed pass was too risky. So, Marcus steeled his resolve and decided to take matters into his own hands. He decided not to pass. As he reached the three-point line, Marcus suddenly gathered the ball and leaped, leaving Patrick completely frozen. The defender was sent flying 5 meters away by the sheer force of the feint. Marcus raised his arm and flicked his wrist, his form remaining as smooth as silk. The ball left his fingertips with a perfect backspin, soaring toward the hoop before snapping the net with a crisp swish. The lead had shrunk to 6 points. Nearly 20,000 fans erupted into a deafening roar that shook the arena. Hearing that tidal wave of sound, Marcus felt his own heart racing with excitement. He turned his head to look back at Patrick, who was left staring in disbelief. Patrick wondered how this young man could be so tall and precise. Those three-pointers felt like daggers stabbing directly into the heart of the defense. Seeing this, the Clippers coach, Coach Tyron, immediately called another timeout. Only 2 minutes had passed since the last one, yet the 12-point lead had already been cut in half. This was the home court of the Lakers, after all. If they allowed the momentum to shift now, it would be nearly impossible to reclaim control of the game. As the Clippers gathered, Tyron pointed toward Marcus and told Kawhi that he would be taking over the primary defensive assignment. Patrick, hearing this, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of disappointment. In those last 2 minutes, he had been completely outplayed. To be honest, if he were the coach, he would have made the exact same change. Kawhi looked over silently. He didn't say a word, merely nodding his head. He was always a man of few words, preferring to let his game do the talking. Standing at over 2 meters tall, Kawhi possessed a terrifying wingspan of 2.21 meters. Combined with his massive, claw-like hands, he was a literal nightmare for any offensive player. Whenever an opponent tried to dribble, those long arms were likely to strip the ball away. It's why his defense is famously known as the claw's grip. Many of the league's elite scorers have struggled against him. Even legends like LeBron have found his defense nearly impossible to overcome. Naturally, when a player gets hot, Kawhi is the one sent in to extinguish the fire. Meanwhile, on the Lakers bench, Coach Korver was briefing his team on the next phase of the game. He reminded them that while they had hit several threes, it didn't mean the whole team was hot. In reality, only Marcus had found his rhythm from deep. The Clippers would likely stick to their four-man zone while keeping one defender glued to Marcus. So, Marcus, the coach said, you have to keep moving. Marcus nodded, promising to use screens to find open space. Korver added that he didn't just have to use his teammates. He could use the space around the four defenders too. The idea was to weave through the zone defense to lose his shadow. Marcus's eyes lit up. He realized he could essentially use the Clippers' own players as screens. Coach Korver nodded with a smile, noting that this would throw their defense into chaos. And as we know, where there is chaos, there is opportunity. LeBron gave Marcus an encouraging pat on the shoulder, telling him the comeback rested on his shoulders. Anthony followed suit, offering his own silent support. They truly hoped he could lead them to victory. Meanwhile, on the bench, Tucker watched with a hint of loneliness. He knew that if Marcus kept this up, his own spot in the rotation might soon be gone. But such is the cold reality of professional sports. When you perform, you are the hero. If you don't, no one spares you a second glance. Soon, the timeout ended. As the Clippers took the offensive, Marcus continued his suffocating pressure on Kawhi. However, the Clippers' veteran guard stepped up, sinking a mid-range jumper. Just like that, the lead was back up to 8 points. Now it was the Lakers' turn. The Clippers stuck to their four-man zone, leaving Kawhi to shadow Marcus like a ghost, denying him any chance to touch the ball. The commentators were quick to notice the shift. Imagine the scene, an elite superstar like Kawhi Leonard personally guarding a player on a 10-day contract. To be honest, being guarded by Kawhi is a badge of honor in itself. The question now was whether Marcus could still find his mark under such pressure. It would be difficult. Kawhi is taller and stronger than Patrick, making those perimeter shots much harder to contest. Across the ocean, the internet was buzzing. In the live stream chats, the critics who had been silenced moments ago were suddenly very vocal again. They argued that Patrick was simply too short. But with Kawhi on him, Marcus was surely finished. The claw's grip is no joke, after all. One particularly bold hater even claimed that if Marcus hit 2 more threes over Kawhi, he would eat something unspeakable on camera. Yes, the same man who had fled earlier was back with more bravado. Back at the Crypto.com arena, the game continued. Kawhi moved like a machine, eyes locked on Marcus, refusing to give him an inch of breathing room. With those massive hands waving in his face, Marcus felt like he was trying to see past a forest. This was the true terror of elite defense. Suddenly, Marcus spun and bolted toward the paint. Kawhi was right there, step for step. But as Marcus reached the interior, he veered into the Clippers' zone defense. He looped around their power forward and sprinted toward the left corner. Kawhi was much larger, and trying to navigate through his own teammates wasn't nearly as easy for him. His teammates couldn't just move out of the way either, or their entire defensive formation would collapse. Seeing Marcus reach the three-point line, Kawhi hurriedly pushed past his teammates to close the gap. But by then, Marcus finally had his opening. Marcus caught the pass from Alex and immediately raised his arms. Kawhi was still 3 meters away, but seeing the shooting motion, he leaped high like a massive bird of prey lunging toward his target. We have to admit, Kawhi's height, vertical, and wingspan are truly elite, even from 3 meters away. That leap was enough to completely smother the view and shut down any shot. But Marcus was no fool. This was merely a Brilliant pump fake. Once again, the roar of the crowd echoed through the arena as Marcus drained the three-pointer. On the next play, we see the Clippers returned to the offensive. Marcus remained glued to Kawhi, refusing to give him an inch of space. Kawhi received the ball and, finding Marcus still draped over him, turned his shoulder to dribble. He used his frame to bump Marcus back, intending to force a mid-range jumper. However, with the claw's grip card active, Marcus's reactions were lightning fast. The moment he was bumped, he recovered and stepped back up. Just as Kawhi raised the ball, before he could even leave the floor, Marcus swung his left hand in a wide arc, delivering a clean, thunderous block. It was a total shutdown. Marcus then spotted a teammate in the left corner and whipped the ball over. As he caught the return pass, he prepared to jump, but Patrick had already recovered and was charging back. Marcus went for another pump fake, and Patrick was completely fooled, flying right past him. By then, Kawhi had also closed in. Marcus sold yet another fake, sending even the elite Kawhi Leonard flying through the air. To be honest, it was a masterclass. Had he shot then, the recovering Patrick might have blocked it, so Marcus took a large sidestep to the right. He cleared Patrick's reaching fingers, leaped, and flicked his wrist. Swish. The ball snapped the net for another three-pointer. Just like that, the lead was cut down to a mere 2 points. The sheer brilliance of that sequence was evident from the deafening cheers of the home crowd. It was simply magnificent. Imagine the scene. He blocks Kawhi on one end, then fakes out both Patrick and Kawhi on the other to hit a three. This is the elite two-way play the Lakers have been desperate for. At this point, one might wonder which of them truly possesses the claw's grip. On the arena's giant screens, the replay of Marcus's transition from defense to offense played over and over. The commentators were shouting in pure excitement. They called Marcus the Lakers' ultimate X-factor this year. That sequence was a work of art. It's hard to understand how such a player could have been overlooked for so long. The other commentator was more blunt, suggesting that as an Eastern player, he simply hadn't been given a chance. Of course, they didn't dwell on the politics for long, moving quickly back to the action. Meanwhile, in the online streaming chats, the fans were. The commentators were delighted, noting that while Marcus's three-pointers weren't as explosive as the last game, his elite two-way play was showing his true value to the team. They pointed out that since he started guarding Kawhi, the superstar hadn't managed to score a single point. We see him sticking to his opponent like glue, denying every pass. Although he lacks Kawhi's height and wingspan, his defensive intensity is nothing short of a death grip. Meanwhile, in the live chat, fans were quick to mock the doubters who claimed Kawhi would dominate Marcus. They asked where the haters had gone, jokingly wondering if those who bet against him were now eating their words. Naturally, the critics had gone silent. That's how it goes. They scream when you fail and vanish when you excel. Back at the Staples Center, we see Marcus once again locked in on Kawhi. To be honest, the pressure was relentless, but even the best defense has its limits. This time, with some help from his teammates, Kawhi finally managed to break free for an alley-oop dunk, pushing the lead back to 4. Marcus has a decent vertical, but being 10 centimeters shorter than Kawhi, there was simply nothing he could do about that one. On the next play, the Lakers returned to the offensive. Marcus sprinted into the paint, weaving through 4 Clippers defenders like a man on a mission. It was an impressive display of off-ball movement, forcing the defense to scramble just to keep up with him. He caught the ball beyond the arc and prepared to shoot. As Kawhi fought through a screen, he accidentally bumped into Marcus's side. But Marcus was brimming with confidence. His release was so lightning fast that the ball was gone before the contact could ruin his form. Just then, the whistle blew. The ball sailed through the air and snapped the net, another three-pointer. The referee signaled a foul on Kawhi. The basket counted, and Marcus earned a chance for a 4-point play. He calmly sank the free throw, bringing the score to a dead heat at 86-all. The Lakers had done it. They had erased a 20-point deficit in just half a quarter. It was a terrifying pace, and everyone knew it all started with Marcus's suffocating defense on the Clippers' star player. His steals and timely threes had completely changed the game, and the arena was now at a fever pitch. Nearly 20,000 fans were screaming as the Lakers' momentum reached its peak. Marcus looked over at Kawhi, who remained as expressionless as ever. He truly looked like a robot with no emotions. At that moment, the Clippers' coach, Tyronn Lue, watched in disbelief as his 20-point lead completely evaporated into thin air. Both stars turned to look at their coach, Tyronn Lue. He said nothing, simply gazing back at them with a look of deep expectation, and naturally, they understood exactly what he meant. He wanted them to figure it out themselves. This was Lue's signature coaching style. Back when he coached LeBron in Cleveland, his strategy for internal dilemmas was simple: leave it to LeBron. And for external problems, well, you still left it to LeBron. There was even a time in the fourth quarter when LeBron was so physically spent he was on the verge of collapse. Lue called 2 consecutive timeouts, not to draw up a play, but purely to give LeBron a chance to breathe. To be honest, only he could pull off such a bold move. So now, faced with Marcus's sudden defensive lockdown and barrage of threes, he was at a loss again. He turned to his 2 core stars, but as we see, they were struggling. While they are elite talents, coming up with tactical solutions mid-crisis isn't exactly their forte. In desperation, Lue turned his attention to the veteran, Rajon Rondo. Rondo had been in the league for years and was a true veteran with a brilliant basketball IQ. He's the kind of player who sees the game 3 steps ahead of everyone else. You might remember when he famously told DeMarcus Cousins to defend thin air to stop a play. That's the level of genius we're talking about. During a dead ball, Lou approached him. He told Rondo that the outcome of the game rested entirely on his shoulders. Rondo, ever the professional, simply nodded and stepped onto the court without a word. Over the next few minutes, Rondo's playmaking revitalized the Clippers' offense. Meanwhile, on the Lakers' side, things were staying just as competitive. Thanks to Marcus breaking the zone defense with his shooting, the lead began to swing back and forth. By the end of the third quarter, only 2 points separated the teams. During the break, nearly every Lakers player came over to high-five Marcus. Deep down, he felt a surge of emotion. After 2 years of wandering the league, this was new. He remembered the days when teammates wouldn't even look him in the eye, let alone celebrate with him. It was a lonely existence for a journeyman player. But now, after just 2 games, he had earned the respect of the entire locker room. It's hard not to feel a bit sentimental when the world finally starts looking back at you. He glanced over at the Clippers bench, his eyes locking onto Kawhi. He found himself wishing for the day his death grip defense wasn't just a system boost, but his own natural skill. The fourth quarter began shortly after. The Lakers decided to rest LeBron, and Marcus remained on the bench as well. He needed the break, and who could blame him, really? He had only played 8 minutes, but the physical toll was immense. On defense, he had to use every ounce of energy to stick to the claw, like glue. On offense, he was constantly sprinting through screens to find an opening for his threes. Even a man made of iron would struggle with that kind of workload. Coach Frank Vogel had his own reasons for keeping him benched for now. These last 2 games had proven that Marcus was the ultimate 3-and-D asset. A player like that is the perfect partner for LeBron James. The plan was simple: wait for LeBron to return, then send Marcus back in to finish the job together. With LeBron resting, Anthony took charge of a group of substitutes to hold the line, but the Clippers were finding their rhythm thanks to Rondo's brilliant playmaking. While the Clippers' offense flowed smoothly, the Lakers' bench players continued their cold shooting streak. By the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter, the lead had grown. The Clippers pushed the gap to 9 points, and then, the most devastating moment of the game occurred. After a block, Anthony suddenly clutched his hip in pain. As he winced, a heavy silence fell over the entire arena. The team trainer rushed onto the court immediately to help Anthony stretch out his left leg. A moment later, he helped Anthony back to the locker room. Word soon followed that he wouldn't return tonight, a massive blow to the Lakers' hopes. To be sure, LeBron's expression turned grim as he approached Coach Vogel. His voice carried a sense of absolute determination. He was ready to go back in right now. Under a normal rotation, this would still be his time to rest, but he knew he couldn't wait any longer. This wasn't just any regular season game. These 2 teams are crosstown rivals, and the Clippers are the Lakers' primary obstacle in the West. Deep down, LeBron knew he had to win this battle. With Anthony injured and LeBron demanding to play, Coach Vogel weighed his options for a moment before finally nodding his consent. It was time for the final push. Vogel then turned his gaze toward Marcus. He told him it was his time to shine. Since Marcus was shooting the best, he was the natural partner for LeBron. At the same time, Vogel gave specific instructions to Andre Drummond to dominate the boards, especially on the offensive end. Andre nodded, fully aware of the stakes. Since joining the Lakers, Andre's performance had been inconsistent at best, and he was desperate to prove his worth to the team. To be honest, he needed this. There were concerns about his fit with LeBron, as LeBron's style requires floor spacing that a traditional big man like Andre doesn't naturally provide. The substitutions were made, and the Lakers lineup now consisted of LeBron, Andre, Alex, Kentavious, and Marcus. On paper, it was a formidable group. Aside from Andre being a bit slower on his feet, this lineup had almost no defensive weaknesses. As play resumed, Marcus went back to work on offense. He kept moving, searching for an opening, but his shadow had changed. He was now being guarded by Paul, a truly elite defender in his own right. Paul is often teased for being on the wrong end of highlight reels, but that only highlights how often he's willing to challenge the league's best players. He is the man the Clippers trust to guard the most dangerous threat in the game's most critical moments. It was a true test for Marcus. Despite the pressure, Marcus managed to sink a banked three-pointer, cutting the lead to 6. On the next possession, we see him return to his death grip on Kawhi. On the other side of the floor, LeBron was locked in on Paul. Even at his age, LeBron can still be a defensive nightmare when the game is on the line. In those crucial possessions, LeBron's defensive pressure was truly fearsome, while Alex stayed glued to Rondo, making every movement a struggle. Rondo drove in and looked to pass, but found Paul smothered and Kawhi completely wrapped up, leaving him no choice but to kick it to Patrick. Patrick tried to shoot, but Kentavious closed out with such intensity that he hesitated, eventually dribbling back to reset with Rondo once more. With everyone else locked down, Rondo was forced into a desperate three-pointer as the shot clock expired. The ball clanked loudly off the rim. The Lakers went back on the attack. LeBron grabbed the rebound and immediately fired a full-court pass to Kentavious, who finished with a powerful dunk. The lead was cut to 4. Over the next minute, the Lakers' suffocating defense held the Clippers scoreless, a remarkable turnaround, to be sure. The Lakers capitalized with 2 fast breaks, LeBron's free throws, and another 3 from Marcus, finally erasing the deficit and tying the game. The Clippers were forced into a timeout as the arena's atmosphere reached a fever pitch. LeBron headed to the bench and gave Marcus a fierce high five. Online, the usual critics had mostly vanished into the shadows. Only a few stubborn voices remained, searching for anything to complain about. They mocked Marcus's left-handed shot, calling him a mere stat stuffer. In a league full of big personalities, they even found his hair too ordinary. Meanwhile, Paul struggled against LeBron's defense, shooting just 1 for 3. On the Lakers' side, Marcus was starting to feel the heavy toll of exhaustion. His shooting wasn't as sharp as before, yet he still managed to sink 2 of his 4 attempts from deep during this critical stretch. The Lakers had actually built a 5-point lead, but the Clippers shooters suddenly found their spark, hitting several consecutive shots from beyond the arc. Even Rondo chipped in with a 3-pointer. This back-and-forth battle ensured the suspense would last until the final 28 seconds of the game. The score stood at 117-115, with the Clippers leading by 2. It was the Lakers' ball, and the tension in the building was palpable. Whether watching in the stands or on screens at home, every fan's heart was racing. Almost everyone in the arena was standing now. We see fans with their hands clasped in prayer, heads bowed in silence. On the giant screen, the cameras focused intently on LeBron. This next possession was everything. As the team leader and the engine of the offense, it was only natural for the ball to be in LeBron's hands. However, Marcus had been lethal from deep, hitting 8 of 12. Entrusting him with the final shot would be just as reasonable a choice. While Alex wiped away sweat and Andre gulped down water, Marcus remained strangely calm. He didn't feel the pressure at all. Instead, Marcus's eyes sparkled with an intense fire as his blood began to boil. Though his physical energy had been largely spent, the heat of the moment seemed to wash away every trace of fatigue. To be part of a battle like this, the only thing one can feel is pure adrenaline. It was his natural gift. Since childhood, the more intense the game, the more excited he became. He loved competition and craved it, a trait that seemed woven into his very DNA. Coach Frank noticed this spark and was genuinely surprised. It's rare, after all, to find a player who thrives so visibly when the pressure is at its peak. Usually, players like that are the ones who deliver when it matters most. He couldn't help but ask, "Marcus, how would you feel about taking this shot?" The rest of the Lakers were stunned by the question. While Marcus had played brilliantly, giving the final shot to a 10-day contract player felt like a massive risk. Could he really handle the weight? We know that the more critical the moment, the heavier the psychological burden becomes for any athlete. Under such crushing pressure, would his 3-pointer remain steady? To be honest, even many seasoned starters hesitate to pull the trigger in these moments. Conventionally, the ball is always handed to the franchise star. So, for the coach to ask Marcus this was, to put it mildly, quite unexpected. Yet, Marcus didn't pause for even a second. He looked at the coach and replied without a hint of hesitation, "I think it sounds great." Hearing this, some of his teammates were even more baffled. Where did a guy on a 10-day contract get this kind of supreme confidence? He didn't try to explain his love for the pressure, simply saying, "I'm just a guy on a short contract. If I make it, people will say I'm a hero." He continued, "If I miss, they'll just blame the person who passed it to me. Who gives such a big shot to a temporary player anyway?" He concluded with a smirk, "So the pressure is on you guys, not me." His logic left the team speechless, and then they all began to laugh. In such a high-stakes atmosphere, his words were the perfect remedy for their nerves. However, LeBron then spoke up with a serious tone. "Marcus, don't worry about running a play. Just stay hidden in the left corner behind the 3-point line." Marcus simply nodded, his silence speaking volumes about his hunger for the coming fight. We returned to the court as the Lakers prepared to inbound. LeBron took the ball and calmly dribbled it across the half-court line. Since the Lakers were only down by 2, they had the luxury of choosing between a tie or a win. Marcus did exactly as LeBron said and waited in the corner. Seeing him standing still, the Clippers coach felt a small sense of relief. Surely, he thought, Frank wouldn't trust the final shot to a nobody. The coach assumed a player on a 10-day contract simply couldn't handle this kind of psychological pressure, or perhaps he was too afraid to even move. Seeing Marcus standing still, he shouted to Paul on the sidelines to focus on helping the interior defense, convinced that LeBron would drive to the rim. Given LeBron's struggling 3-point shot tonight, the coach was certain he would attack the paint. Paul nodded, remembering all too well the times LeBron had beaten him with a game winner before. This time, he was determined not to let it happen while Leonard guarded the perimeter. LeBron executed a sharp crossover, gaining a half-step on Leonard before using his strength to shoulder past him and drive hard toward the basket. Even though 2 defenders were already waiting inside, Paul didn't feel safe and rushed over to help double-team the superstar. Just as Paul committed to the drive, LeBron whipped a precise pass right over his shoulder. Paul realized his mistake instantly, but it was too late. He spun around to recover, but Marcus was already wide open, standing nearly 4 meters away from the nearest defender as he caught the ball. Marcus didn't hesitate for a single heartbeat, launching the shot as the basketball traced a high arc through the air toward the rim. Every eye in the arena was fixed on that orange sphere. The Clippers players and fans felt their hearts tighten, knowing how lethal Marcus had been. In this do-or-die moment, the tension was thick enough to choke on as 20,000 spectators watched the ball finally descend. Then came a loud, heavy metallic clang. The ball struck the front of the rim and bounced high into the air. To be honest, it was a gut-wrenching sound. The crowd let out a collective groan of disappointment, while the Clippers coach and fans finally allowed themselves to breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed the Lakers' #1 player lacked the mental fortitude for the big stage, failing to stay calm when the game was truly on the line. As the ball hung in the air, Lakers fans everywhere began to wonder why on earth the ball had been trusted to a temporary player. The local commentator, speaking with frantic energy, shouted, "Oh no, why would you give the ball to Marcus in a moment like this?" He admitted Marcus had been great all night, but pointed out he had never played a single second of clutch time in his entire professional career. The pressure was simply too much, and many wondered if LeBron would live to regret making such a risky pass instead of taking the shot himself. In the broadcast booth, the announcers shared that sense of regret, noting how tragic it was for Marcus to miss such a wide-open look. If that shot had gone in, it would have proven Marcus was a big-time player, something vital for his hopes of signing a guaranteed contract. However, the live comment section was strangely silent for a moment. The ball had rimmed out, but the game was far from over in this suffocating tension. Even the harshest critics didn't have the heart to complain yet, as the ball bounced high off the rim, for Clippers players crowded into the paint. They were all fighting for the rebound, while most of the Lakers, aside from LeBron, were still stuck outside the three-point line, unable to reach the ball in time. The rebound was snatched down by the Clippers' veteran guard, Rajon, who prepared to dribble. But before he could even bring the ball down, a pair of hands lunged in. This newcomer grabbed the ball with sheer force, literally ripping it away from Rajon's grasp. And we see that this tenacious thief was none other than Alex, the fan-favorite hustle king of Los Angeles. In an instant, the situation shifted, and 4 Clippers players immediately swarmed around him. Alex was wrapped up like a souvenir, but he caught a glimpse of Marcus still standing in the left corner. Without a second thought, Alex made his move. He leaped toward the baseline, creating just enough space in midair to whip a pass out. When the fans saw the ball heading toward Marcus again, a collective gasp filled the arena. The local commentator's voice reached a fever pitch as he shouted, "Alex with the steal. He's passing to Marcus again. Marcus just missed. Surely he won't shoot it this time. Who will he find? LeBron is open on the perimeter." There was an open teammate and plenty of time on the clock, so naturally, we'd expect Marcus to pass to LeBron to reset the play. However, he wasn't thinking about any of that. He was wide open again, and to pass up such an opportunity would be a waste. As for psychological pressure, well, that was a complete non-issue for him. For a man as hungry for battle as Marcus, the concept of clutch time, nerves simply didn't exist. Paul rushed back to contest the shot, but it was too late. Marcus caught the ball without a hint of hesitation. His eyes were filled with absolute resolve as he bent his knees, rose up, and flicked his wrist. The entire motion was fluid, a perfect display of shooting mechanics. Paul lunged forward with incredible speed, but because he had been so far away, he could only watch as the ball soared just beyond his fingertips. Once again, the hearts of every spectator in the arena leaped into their throats. Even the announcers were shouting in anticipation. The basketball glided silently through the air as a heavy hush fell over the entire Staples Center. Everyone held their breath, their eyes locked onto the orange sphere as it traced its long arc through the sky, until the very next moment, swish. The satisfying sound of the ball snapping through the nylon echoed as the white net whipped upward. It was a perfect three-pointer. The Staples Center erupted into a deafening roar, like a volcano finally blowing its top, while across the ocean, the live broadcast chat went absolutely wild. In the broadcast booth, the lead commentator threw a powerful fist into the air, shouting about how incredible and explosive the play was, while his partner could hardly contain his own excitement. He marveled at Marcus's nerves of steel, wondering if the man was truly human to play like that in such a clutch moment. He was, quite literally, a big game player. On the live stream, the critics who were ready to pounce suddenly lost their voices, as if they'd been muted. The screen was instantly flooded with praise and symbols of total disbelief. The digital chat was exploding, but back on the court, the 10 players had no time to celebrate. The Clippers were out of timeouts and had to move immediately. Because they had used their pauses earlier, the Clippers were forced to play on, while the Lakers scrambled back on defense. The final attack was inevitably entrusted to their star, Leonard. Once again, Marcus was tasked with the defense, locking his eyes onto Leonard. On the sidelines, Coach Frank signaled that a tactical foul was an option. Marcus nodded in understanding. With only 13 seconds remaining on the clock, just as Leonard prepared to make his move, Marcus reached out and firmly grabbed his arm. Since the Lakers hadn't reached the foul limit for the quarter yet, the Clippers didn't get free throws. They would have to inbound the ball and try again. Paul took the inbound pass while Marcus stuck to Leonard like glue, refusing to give him an inch of space. Paul looked for a passing lane several times, but found nothing. Seeing that Leonard was completely smothered, and remembering how Marcus had stripped the ball twice before, Paul decided it was too risky to force the pass. Instead, he opted for a contested shot from the perimeter against LeBron. The ball hit the back of the rim with a heavy thud, bouncing harmlessly away. The red light on the backboard flared to life as the final buzzer sounded. The game was over. The Lakers had escaped with a thrilling one-point victory, 118-117. The arena erupted into a sea of cheers once more. The Lakers players raised their arms in triumph, and Alex was the first to rush over to Marcus in a fit of joy. He hugged Marcus tightly, shouting that they had won thanks to that clutch three-pointer. Soon, LeBron and the others made their way over as well. LeBron told him that this was his moment and to enjoy every second of it. As a veteran of many such battles, he was happy to share the spotlight. The rest of the squad, including the big men and the bench, lined up to high-five Marcus. They all agreed. The man had ice in his veins. The team huddled together, soaking in the hard-earned atmosphere of victory. After a few moments, the intense emotions began to settle into a calm satisfaction. The Clippers players approached to offer their respect. Leonard shared a brief embrace with LeBron before walking over to find Marcus. A man of few words, Leonard simply told him he was a respectable opponent. Marcus kept it even shorter, telling Leonard the feeling was mutual. Leonard turned and headed for the tunnel. But in that brief hug, Marcus could still feel the fierce competitive fire burning within him. Such is the nature of superstars. We see that for players like these, the stronger the opponent, the more their competitive spirit burns. Paul George shared a hug with LeBron before heading over to Marcus. He told Marcus that he would remember his name and looked forward to their next duel, to which Marcus simply nodded and expressed his own anticipation. As the Clippers departed, a staff member approached Marcus with an apologetic smile, explaining that he couldn't leave the court just yet. There was one more interview, this time with a reporter from his home country. While such requests are an honor for rookies, they can be a chore for superstars. The staff member's polite hesitation made it clear that in their eyes, Marcus's status had already ascended to a much higher level. Upon hearing the reporter was from home, Marcus immediately agreed to the request. After all, seeing a familiar face in a foreign land is always a welcome change. The staff member nodded quickly, relieved by the cooperation, and hurried off to bring the media team over to the court. Soon, a beautiful reporter accompanied by a cameraman approached, her long hair flowing as she walked toward our protagonist. She wore a form-fitting white dress that elegantly highlighted her figure, and Marcus recognized her instantly as Sarah, a familiar face in sports media. He had actually sat for an interview with her when he first arrived in the league, and most fans back home knew her work quite well. She was a fixture at these games, often conducting post-game interviews, though her standing wasn't quite at the level of the major American networks yet. Under normal circumstances, she rarely had the chance to land a one-on-one with the league's biggest stars after a high-stakes game. She usually spoke with role players, but today was different. She greeted Marcus warmly, noting that it had been a while since their last meeting. Hearing his native language in the middle of an NBA arena felt refreshing to Marcus, and he offered her a genuine, relaxed smile in return. Sarah congratulated him on his incredible performance and that game-winning shot, to which Marcus gave a humble nod of thanks. She listed his stats, 28 points, 9 three-pointers, 2 steals, and a block, all in just 15 minutes of play, a truly historic efficiency. She then asked him how he felt deep down after such a dominant display, and Marcus paused, looking as though he were carefully gathering his thoughts. He took a moment to organize his words, maintaining a serious expression that suggested a profound or philosophical answer was coming. After taking a deep breath and appearing fully prepared to speak, he looked at her and simply said, "Great." Sarah blinked in total surprise. She couldn't help but burst into laughter, realizing he'd spent all that time preparing just one word. Even the cameraman chuckled, causing the lens to shake. After the camera stabilized, Sarah managed to suppress her laughter and asked what exactly had fueled such an incredible performance tonight. This time, Marcus didn't hesitate at all. He smiled and replied that he did it just to get an interview with her, making her laugh like a blooming flower. She told him he was quite the charmer before moving on to her final question, noting that he had a massive following of fans back home. When asked if he had a message for them, Marcus nodded and said he wouldn't let his supporters down, while telling the haters they could say whatever they liked. He added that he wouldn't give them the time of day, a bold statement that caught Sarah off guard, given his usually mild-mannered appearance. It was a rare flash of fire from him. To be honest, after 2 years of struggling, it was only natural that some fans had lost interest. He could accept criticism of his game, but many of the online trolls had crossed the line into personal attacks. This was his way of drawing a line in the sand and responding to that negativity. Understanding his perspective, Sarah smiled and thanked Marcus for the interview, adding that she looked forward to seeing more brilliant performances. Marcus nodded, saying he looked forward to their next meeting, but as he headed toward the player tunnel, he was greeted by a surprising sight. LeBron James himself was waiting for him right at the entrance. Usually, this is a gesture of respect reserved for players who have truly stood out. It's a team tradition for the stars to wait for a standout teammate before heading to the locker room together. After a historic night and a game-winning shot, Marcus had certainly earned that honor. LeBron clapped him on the shoulder and called him brother. LeBron invited him to the official press conference, reminding him that he predicted Marcus's luck was about to change. After a quick post-game soak in the locker room, Marcus joined LeBron for his very first official NBA press conference. He handled the reporters' questions with perfect poise, even cracking a few jokes that kept the entire room laughing. Meanwhile, back inside the Staples Center merchandise area, a young blonde boy of about 10 came running in, looking quite frantic. Clutching $10, he asked the clerk for a Lakers #1 jersey, but the clerk simply shook his head and said they didn't have any. The boy was confused, insisting he wanted the jersey of the man who hit the game winner, the player named Marcus. The clerk smiled apologetically and explained that since Marcus was only on a short-term contract, his jerseys weren't being mass-produced yet. The clerk explained that the shop doesn't stock jerseys for short-term players, as 10-day contracts are non-guaranteed and highly uncertain. A player might be cut immediately after a single game, and even if they stay, they might only be with the team for 10 days. They could head to another team or vanish from the league entirely, making a jersey run impossible. Hearing this, the boy grew quite anxious. He insisted he only wanted Marcus's jersey, but the clerk just shrugged, suggesting the boy leave a phone number in case one ever arrived. We see the boy's parents enter the shop, and, after learning about the situation, they decide to leave their contact information as requested. Before leaving, the boy repeatedly urged the clerk to call him the very moment Marcus's jersey became available, as he truly wanted one. Meanwhile, fans on social media were starting to vent their frustration, calling it a crime that Marcus's jersey wasn't for sale yet. They argued that since he was only on a 10-day contract, the Lakers management needed to act fast and give him a guaranteed deal. At this moment, Marcus was blissfully unaware of the outside noise, and to be honest, he wasn't worried about his contract status at all. Through these last 2 games, he had proven his worth as a high-quality 3D player, a role that is always in high demand in the NBA. He felt certain that even if the Lakers didn't offer him a full contract, other teams would soon be fighting to sign him themselves. Besides, the Lakers were desperate for his specific skill set, and he trusted that the front office wouldn't remain indifferent for long. That night, he returned to Alex's garage and fell into a deep sleep, while halfway across the world, the internet was absolutely exploding. Every major sports media outlet was shouting his name, with headlines marveling at how Marcus scored 28 points in just 15 minutes. Some headlines were even more dramatic, jokingly telling LeBron to step aside for the new king and demanding management sign Marcus immediately. Reports and posts spread like wildfire across the web, and while many were a bit exaggerated, the hype was undeniable. The media is always like this. When you fail, they crush you into the dirt. But when you succeed, they praise you as a god. As a player representing his home country in the NBA, he had to be prepared for both the adoration and the inevitable criticism. A famous basketball commentator simply posted one word on social media, refreshing, and for the fans, that one word said it all. Ever since their previous legends retired, the fans had been waiting for the next star to truly make a mark on the NBA stage. He had been in the NBA for 2 years, but he spent that time wandering between teams, only getting a few minutes of garbage time. Naturally, there wasn't much to show for it until today, when he not only dropped 28 points, but also hit a near-game winner. For the fans back home, it felt like a decade of frustration was finally being released, and the news quickly began to trend everywhere. Even those who didn't follow basketball were searching for his name, proud to see one of their own finally making a mark in the league. Highlights of his 28 points in just 15 minutes were spreading across every platform, though Marcus himself was completely unaware. The next morning at 5:30, he woke up to that cold electronic voice again, tasking him with 1,000 lateral slides. The reward was a 20% boost to his lateral speed, a prospect that made him snap wide awake with excitement. A 20% increase would instantly put him among the league's elite defenders, taking his game to an entirely different level. It seemed he really was becoming a top-tier 3D player, and unable to contain his excitement, he headed straight for the gym. The security guard was woken up by his arrival, but he didn't complain. Instead, he greeted Marcus with genuine enthusiasm. The guard, a lifelong Lakers fan who had worked at the arena for decades, praised the game winner and even asked for an autograph. Marcus told him he could have one anytime, and the guard nodded happily, promising to come find him later during a break. The guard remarked on his diligence, noting that he had only ever seen one other person work this hard, Kobe Bryant. Marcus answered without hesitation, knowing Kobe's legendary work ethic, and the guard laughed, wishing him luck in his journey. The guard hoped to see a second Black Mamba soon, but Marcus just smiled. Being compared to a legend was an honor, of course. However, he didn't want to be the second version of someone else. He wanted to be the first and only version of himself. He entered the gym, shed his jacket, and immediately began the grueling lateral slide training as the sun began to rise. By 9 o'clock, the rest of the Lakers players began to arrive, and Marcus waited quietly for the general manager to speak. The manager explained that Marcus's performance had earned the team's respect and was worth a guaranteed $2 million contract. But then he added a twist. He believed Marcus was worth even more, and given the team's current salary cap, things were complicated. The team could actually offer over $5 million, but that kind of salary requires consistent performance, so the manager wanted to see a few more games first. If Marcus could maintain this level of play until his 10-day contract expired, that $5 million guaranteed deal would be waiting for him. We see Marcus breathe a sigh of relief as he realizes the manager's true intention. She wasn't holding back out of doubt, but rather to give him a chance. By proving himself over the next few games, he could secure a much higher salary, and Marcus nodded, signaling that he understood the challenge perfectly. The manager continued, explaining that even if he didn't hit the 5 million mark, a guaranteed contract was still his for the taking. At the very least, he'd have 2 million, as his near-game winner alone was worth that much. Hearing this, Marcus couldn't help but offer a grateful smile. To be honest, the manager was being quite fair. After finishing the morning team practice, Marcus headed out with his teammates to grab some lunch. Upon returning, he found the security guard waiting with a Lakers jersey and a marker, and Marcus happily signed it for the old man. The guard was thrilled, telling Marcus to keep working hard so that once he became a superstar, the jersey would fetch a fortune online. Marcus was momentarily speechless at the bluntness, but the guard just laughed, admitting he was joking and would never actually sell a Lakers jersey. Time moved quickly, and we arrive at 9 o'clock the following evening. Another game day, this time against the formidable Phoenix Suns. The Suns had eliminated the Lakers the previous year, making them the first defending champions to exit in the first round, a truly bitter record. Because of that, the entire team was hungry for revenge, especially their star player, James, who had faced relentless criticism after that early exit. Everyone from NBA legends to casual fans had something to say, so even though this was just a regular season game, James had no intention of losing. Before the tip-off, fans in the domestic streaming rooms were already buzzing, debating whether Marcus could keep up his incredible three-point shooting streak. Many hoped he would, as it had been a long time since a local player had made such an impact, though the skeptics were out in force as well. Some argued there was no way he'd explode for a third straight game, especially with news that their star big man, Anthony, was out with an injury. Without Anthony, the Suns' defense could relax inside and focus more energy on the perimeter players, making things much harder for Marcus. Critics suggested his first 2 games were just a fluke, similar to Linsanity, where teams simply didn't have a scouting report on him yet. Now that he'd put the league on notice, the Suns had surely studied him. If he went off again, the Suns' coaching staff might as well resign. One fan in the chat even bet he'd eat something disgusting if Marcus succeeded, prompting others to snap back that he still hadn't paid up for his last 2 failed bets. As the insults flew in the comments, we find ourselves in the streaming booth with the lead anchor, Kevin, and the well-known basketball analyst, Ryan. They were joined once again by the fan-favorite host, Sophie, and the broadcast began with Kevin posing the first big question of the night.